the question is, if I was starting over, I would go subs in the very beginning just to kind of naturally mitigate and handle that flux in demand, good or bad. And then I would eventually work it to get into a hybrid system role where I have like 3 to 6 in-house employees and then 1 to 4 subcontractors on top of it. Welcome to the Elite Business Advice podcast. But today, welcome to Ask a Painter. I figured we're here painting our new office space. I'm so excited about this. And not just to be efficient with my time and record a podcast while I was painting, I kind of wanted to do an ode to a good friend of mine who built a whole brand out of this thing called Ask a Painter. I'm a painter, clearly, been there, even made the cover of APC magazine once in my painting clothes. These probably exact outfit, we don't have to talk about that. But I thought it'd be fun to go through. We always love doing the Ask Me Anything segments. Occasionally we get a lot of questions that come in, different things when we're in the industry. And so I love doing the Ask Me Anything things, just kind of, 5, 6, 7 kind of quick things in an episode, not one topic I'm diving deep on. And I thought, what? It'd be a lot of fun to do an Ask a Painter episode on my own channel because Nick is a great friend of mine and we love to poke fun at each other. We love to have fun. I just posted a video a little bit ago about repost gray. There was a whole fun thing that came up on that on social media. Nick's a great friend of mine. Honestly, one of the most humble, genuine human beings I've ever met in my life. You talk about a servant leader, not just a PCA, but this industry. And we built a great friendship over the years. And so this is kind of an ode to him while also like poking at him a little bit. And any chance I get to poke fun at Nick, I'm going to take it. But Nick's going to be at our retreat this summer. He's always willing to come pour into our people in any way that we need. And that's what I appreciate about him in the servant leadership. And so I hope you get some nuggets away from this. I am going to be painting while I record this. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can critique me. You can do whatever you want. If you're listening to this on audio, well, I encourage you to go watch on YouTube and give me some pointers. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. But it's kind of like riding a bike. I've just picked it right back up. So I hope it helps. Thanks for plugging in. This is the Elite Business Advice podcast. All right, so question number 1 that we had, and I'm taking this from some questions that we had clients submit. We put some stuff on our social media about this, so it's not just like a random list of questions, although there's a couple questions that came up on a call I was on earlier today that I want to share with you guys as well. Question number 1 came in, and this is something I think a lot of people probably could relate to. And so, again, I'm not going to use any names in this anywhere throughout any of these questions, but question number 1 was, I feel like I'm dealing with some owner fatigue. Has anybody ever dealt with this? And I'm going to guess the answer to that is yes. I give you some thoughts back on it. I think owner fatigue is a real thing. Some people call it burnout. I think if you talk like clinical burnout, I think it kind of could be used synonymously with owner fatigue. And if you're watching this on video, yes, I'm right-handed cutting in backwards because that's how I like to roll sometimes. I can do it left-handed too, just so we're clear. But owner's fatigue can be a real thing. Burnout, whatever you want to call it. Again, I think a lot of people have very different names for a very similar thing. But sometimes as we go through our journey, maybe it's years down the road, we see this a lot with owners. Obviously, we see it a lot with people in general, but we see it with owners that, go through a long time and maybe they don't make as much progress in their business as they want. I've talked a lot on this show about the downfall of comparison, that, we compare ourselves too much. And so sometimes that causes owner's fatigue because we get maybe discouraged because, we're just not farther along in our journey where we want to be at. Sometimes owners, what we also see is they continue to build their business, they grow it, they get so far away from like what they were doing when they started the business, whether that's actually painting, whether that's actually managing projects, whether it's actually doing sales, and they are now leading and coaching other people, and it's a whole new level of leadership and management. And as I'm talking through this, and I won't share all the stories that I know, and he shared at PCA Expo, but I know Nick even kind of went through that a little bit as well. Like he realized he was the manager, the coach, the leader of his business, and it was a new journey for him, and it took some time for him to really figure out like where does he fit into his own business. And so, I think it's common. I would argue that I've probably even been there in our business as well, from time to time. And owner's fatigue is a real thing. I think what you got to figure out is, are you still going in the direction that you really truly want to? We talk a lot about making sure that your business serves your life. It's, in terms of time freedom, in terms of money freedom, whatever that means to you, whatever you're desiring for you and your life and your family and your business needs to suit that. And if you realize you're running in a direction that doesn't fulfill that, again, maybe less about in the moment right now, but more big picture, then, unfortunately, maybe you need to have a hard look on what your goals are and why your goals are what they are, right? So, that would be one thing I would encourage. Another thought is, figure out what do you truly enjoy. One thing that I talk a lot with our clients and our team about to make sure we're coaching in the right direction is, what do you truly enjoy doing in your business? And then how do we build your business around doing that task, right? If it's what you're good at, it's what you enjoy doing, how do we build your business around that? And so that's something else I would explore, right? Are you doing tasks, and the last thing is, on this, and this isn't necessarily how to fix this, again, that could be an entire episode in and of itself, but like the last kind of thought I have on that is, is it just a season that you're in, or is it the direction you're heading, right? For example, you may not love managing projects and paint projects, but it might just be for maybe the rest of this year. It might just even be for another month or two until you can hire a project manager or replace one that needed to go, whatever it is, right? And so is what you're feeling a actual long-term thing, or is it just a short-term situation that you find yourself in? So I know I went kind of deep on that one, much longer than I expected to, but I think it's a real thing. We can talk nuts and bolts on this podcast all day, but sometimes it's those mindset type things that we need to, make sure that we're also talking about too, because it's definitely a reality out there. So, all right, second one. Somebody asked a question, and I kind of appreciated the question here. They said, I was doing job costing. This was an industry event I was at, and they said, doing job costing, and we realized our gross profit was at 20 to 30%. How do we start to diagnose and triage? Like, where do we fix this at, right? And so I'll kind of run through real quickly the couple of questions that I asked this individual, kind of what I would suggest looking at again is in a quickest time frame that I get to answer a question like this. But the first part was, okay, what are you charging? What's your hourly rate? And it was actually at a pretty good number. I think maybe a little bit low for where they were located out on the East Coast. But it wasn't like, we're charging $35 an hour, $40 an hour, which was 1,000,000% what I expected. I said, okay, great. So it's not necessarily the charge rate. It's not hurting you, but that's not the reason why your gross profit's at 20 to 30%. Next question was, talk to me about the estimated hours versus the actual hours. Where's the disconnect at? And we started diving into that a little bit. Didn't have a ton of data. Encouraged them to get a lot more insight and in tune with that, right? We're estimating 80 hours for a project. How long is it taking us to complete it? That will kind of start to tell you, at least to some degree, if there's a huge disconnect there, right? We're estimating 80, it's taking us 150. Okay, are we messing up the estimate? Or are we, really off with our production? And so I encouraged him to, do some tracking, do some checking. It was his painters actually painting at, industry benchmark averages, or not. So that was kind of the conversation there, to just do a deeper dive into it. A couple of questions later revealed that some of the problems seem to be estimating on prep work. And so that was part of, tracking kind of the thought of, hey, track your guys' time. Obviously don't tell them. That's one thing. I'm gonna be very clear. If you're ever tracking your team's time to see how long it takes them to do things, don't tell them that you're tracking them. Because they're going to overperform every time and they're going to skew off your study, and then you're going to start looking in the wrong places for answers. So I said, check it by thing. And so what I mean by that is, sometimes they might be fine with painting, but it's the prep work, right? And so he kind of shared an example of something that he realized that, it just took way longer than what he was factoring in time-wise for. And we think that, maybe it's more so isolated to the 25 to 30% is just on jobs where they have these, prep things that don't go according to plan. And that was kind of the diagnosis on that. So there's a lot of places to look on, again, root cause of things, right? There's a lot of ways to kind of diagnose these things, and sometimes it's just asking questions. I'm really not trying to make this whole episode about negatives, much as I want to jokingly talk about Ask a Painter and all these other things. Notice, Nick, I didn't say this is Ask a Painter Live, so you can't sue me for trademark infringement or branding or anything like that. It's just Ask a Painter today. But, Nick always says, job costing leads you down a path of 17 more questions about your business. And I think it's so true, right? You start checking some of those actuals versus estimated things and whatnot. So, all right. I have to show you guys this. You're watching the video. It's the first time ever I have a podcast outline on the back of a Sherwin-Williams receipt. So, not too proud about that. I have to at least have a couple of things to keep my brain on track. And, I figured I couldn't use my phone because that's what I'm recording this on. So, all right, here was a question I got asked earlier today, and this is actually a good one. It's not one of my favorites, and honestly, in a way that, sometimes I'll give advice to people on stuff. The question was, if you were going to start your painting business over, what business model would you take? And the context of the question was W-2 versus in-house employee, W-2 versus subcontractors. And every time I hear just the conversation W-2 versus subcontractors, I always think of another ABC cover magazine, probably second best one that's ever been out there, with my good friends Brad Ellison and John McFarland having a debate about this. So I got to witness that live in Michigan last summer. It was a ton of fun too. But honestly, my answer to that, and again, the context was kind of given, like knowing everything that you know and have seen in the industry in the last 8 years of doing this, what would you choose? And I love this question, and my answer is, in the very, very beginning, I think I would go full sub route. And the reason behind that is, it's much easier to weather the ups and downs of demand until you get your marketing systems dialed in, until you get a good steady backlog of work. And then once you're consistently 8+ weeks out, again, Midwest terms here, a few cities that'll maybe differ in just because homeowners don't want to wait more than 3 or 4 weeks. Once you can kind of get some consistent demand built up, then it's a little bit more comfortable to scale in-house. And so, or you feel a little bit more secure in that. And so my answer to the question is, if I was starting over, I would go subs in the very beginning, just to kind of naturally mitigate and handle that flux in demand, good or bad. And then I would eventually work it to get into a hybrid system role, where I have like 3 to 6 in-house employees, and then 1 to 4 subcontractors on top of it. I think I would probably, for me at least, I was thinking in theory, like if I was going to start a painting company while I'm still doing this with EBA, I feel too much conflict with our clients here in St. Louis, and I don't know that I really want to. But if I was going to do it, my goal would be to get it to about 1.5 million, have an office manager, an estimator, a project manager, and then see if we can't build efficiencies to a point where we could do maybe, say, 2 million a year or so, just with those 3 key leadership positions. That would be my goal. Again, if I didn't have this as another income source, maybe that'd be closer to 3 to 4 million, have 2 of each. Again, I'm kind of deviating from the question here, but I love the hybrid role, or the hybrid model. I think it gives a lot of flexibility. It's great for everybody that's in a seasonal climate. We talked a lot about seasonal climate. Don't forget, holidays happen all around the world, even in warm climates. So there is a natural slowdown November, December, a little bit in January, because people are still celebrating the holidays and distracted with everything going on and not making decisions and not prioritizing stuff and putting it off till January. So again, those in a northern climate I think have even more of a disadvantage. But so if you're in a seasonal climate, I love the hybrid model concept. To keep a certain amount of people busy year round. Arguably, you typically do make a little bit more money on your in-house employees, and so the margins are somewhat a little bit better there. Again, management's different. There's pros and cons to it, for sure. But I love the idea of kind of having a hybrid model based on all the hundreds of painting companies I've seen. Again, there's no right or wrong way to do this, guys. It's based on what's best for you and your situation, your personality, your leadership, your goals. But just if I was doing it over 100%, that would be the route I would go. So, next question, how to raise prices. This is a good one. The question was given the context around, I feel like I need to raise our prices. And they were kind of feeling like they were already pushing the top end of that mark. And so, they were just trying to figure out, like, how do we go about raising our prices, which then led into another great question that I'll share here in a second that I thought was worth discussing with you guys. And so the question was, or the thought behind how do we raise prices, it's number one, it's just build more value and enhance the experience. Again, go back to the first principles reasoning episode we just did not too long ago, where we talked about why do homeowners actually make decisions and different things. And so, I think get a very good fundamental understanding of that and just cater your entire sales process, the entire customer experience, the entire customer journey that they go on from the second they check out your website all the way through, when they make a decision to go with you. What does that look like? What do those touch points look like? How do you navigate that? So 10 out of 10, recommend just elevate your process. People need confidence, they need to trust you, and they need to kind of have an obvious understanding of why your price might be 50% more, 30% more, whatever the number is, than everybody else, right? And if you have a very thorough process, you're very professional, you're dialed in, you're on time, you communicate well, you do all the extra little things to build value, and give them confidence and educate them as a homeowner on what to expect and next steps and all this stuff. And then, your bid is 30% more from Joe Blow's, but Joe Blow showed up 15 minutes late, didn't even text them to tell them, and emailed them a bid over 72 hours later. It's gonna be pretty obvious maybe why your price is, 30% more than Joe's, but, again, what's the homeowner, what do they expect the rest of the job to look like? I think that's one fundamental thing to think about when it comes to sales. Whatever that journey is you take them on in the beginning, I guess this could be good or bad, it's what they expect. They just assume the rest of the process is going to follow suit like that. So if it's good, they just assume that from then on, from when they make that decision all the way through, the final walkthrough and final payment, they expect that process to be the exact same as what that sales process was. So one, you got to make sure everything is in sync there. But two, if it's bad up front, well, that's kind of what they then are expecting your paint job to follow suit on, right? If you don't communicate well, you don't show up on time, you don't give them a lot of education. It's like, all right, cool, here's what you want, here's the bid, all this stuff. They kind of just assume that's probably what the rest of it's going to be like, right? So we just got to make sure we're building the value in that. The question that popped off from that I wanted to include here, because I thought it was a really good question. It's not one that I hear or get a whole heck of a lot. It was kind of fun to talk through with a couple of people. Is how do you really accurately identify your target? Are you marketing and targeting the right areas? So that was the other half of the question is like, if I feel like I'm at the top of my price point, am I in the right demographic? Am I in the right market? And so it was kind of the fun thought was like, how do you identify what is your good target market? The obvious thing we want to kind of look at here is disposable income. Do people have and disposable income that they are want to and are willing to pay to have stuff done. That's the biggest thing. And a couple of things that you can kind of look at. School districts can sometimes be one, or do people send their kids to private school, and different things like that. But I think an easy one is driving through a neighborhood. Obviously, you're only going to know that from conversations, or I don't know, somehow maybe doing some research. But the biggest one that I would look at is, do they keep up with their homes in the area? That to me is a huge one. If you are looking through and you notice that 90% of the homes, the grass is tall and they aren't maintaining their homes and stuff, or in anything even, vehicles, whatever, it's pretty obvious they're probably not going to spend money on that, right? But if you're in a spot where you notice, hey, they pay to have lawn care done, they take pride in their house, they're paying for convenience, right? All these different things kind of starts to at least allude to the fact that they might be willing to spend some money to do that. So I don't know, it's just kind of a fun, again, question that I don't really get a lot or get to think through a lot, and wanted to include that on here. So the last question that I had, this is a good one. What stipulations do you recommend putting in place for employee incentives for like recruiting people, right? So one thing that tends to work well for hiring new employees is if you have good new existing employees, they may know and hang around with other good people. And so how do we maybe incentivize that a little bit? I love having some sort of an employee bonus. Obviously you're going to spend money on recruiting. I'd rather that money go back into my team's pocket. And so what I would suggest on that is give them whatever the bonus is. Maybe it's $500 or $250 or whatever. I would give them half of that, whatever it is, at the end of 30 days of that new person's employment, and the other half 30 days at the end of 90 days. So that way it just kind of locks in, and you're only spending money on that. I don't have exact data on this. I don't know. Nick very well could. As far as like how much it costs to recruit the average employee. But for me, what I would just say and throw out there to you guys is, I know a lot of clients, a lot of people that, if you spend $500 to $750 to recruit, a good employee, that's usually money well spent. Like there's usually a pretty solid ROI on that. So again, just so you know, it's usually like, I'll give my employees like $50 or something, right? And it's like, I think we might need the money to talk a little bit harder on this one. And so I would just encourage you to, think about that and keep in perspective. Really truthfully, I'm gonna go math here for you in a second. And we all know I'm doing this off the top of my head. I really don't have anything on the wall in front of me. But if you're at your, say, you're already at your break-even point, you are already, beyond that, whatever it is, every new employee realistically should generate, and I'm just going to kind of go with a low number here, $3,500 of money in your pocket, okay? And so I would keep that in mind. A lot of people view recruiting as like a necessary evil, but it's really an opportunity, right? And I look at it, just quick, simple math as I'll start to wrap this up here. An average painter should produce about $10,000 a month in revenue for your business, okay? So $10,000 a month, let's just say, on average, you're gonna pay out, let's just say it's an experienced painter, and I forget which dollar amount this is at, but let's just go with $4,000 for sake of an example here. It would be somewhere in that ballpark for a good average painter. They could produce $10,000 a month for you in revenue. So you're gonna have $4,000 in labor costs on that 10K that they're gonna produce. You're gonna have, let's just even shoot on the high end, 15% materials, so that's another $1,500. So now you're down, so that's $5,500 in cost on 10 grand, so you're at $4,500. I give you the number of $3,500. Let's just say you've got a little bit extra of some administrative stuff. Maybe you need to bump up your marketing to make sure you have enough work, to keep this extra employee busy. So again, I'm shooting on the low end, but I'm just going to say, again, depending on their wage, $3,500 to $4,000 a month of profit off of hire, right? So again, what's $500 worth to you? Well, $500 quickly turning into $4,000 in a month. I mean, that's 8 times return on your investment, like out of the gate on the first month. If that employee stays with you for 10 years, what's your return on that, right? So just let's work on the mindset a little bit, maybe with that, and make sure that we're looking at recruiting and what we're spending on recruiting in the right manner. I'm all about organic and trying to do stuff as cost effective as possible. I learned to start saying cost effective, not cheap, because it sounds better. But let's also realize sometimes in business we have to spend a little bit of money to be able to make money. So I hope you got some nuggets out of this. I hope you found some entertainment and amusement in here. I also appreciate you allowing me to be a little efficient with my time as I've been painting this office this week and just trying to get to a functional state soon. So I don't have a plan for next week's episode. I might do another Ask a Painter on Monday when I'm wrapping up the navy blue accent walls. We'll see. If everybody loves this, I'm going to post a clip on this on social. You might get Ask a Painter round 2, and then that'll be it, and we'll get back to normal in the new office. Hope you have a great day. Thanks for plugging into this week's episode. I hope you're able to take a few nuggets away from it to implement into your business. Remember, knowledge without implementation is useless. If you're curious about what we do and how we help painting contractors all over North America, schedule a free business analysis meeting with us at www.elitebusinessadvisors.com. Our entire team of advisors have ran and managed painting companies just like myself and are here to help support you on your journey. We have packages available for contractors at every stage of business, from flying solo and just starting out, all the way to multi-million-dollar businesses. And lastly, if you loved this episode, please leave us a rating and a review. It helps others on the platform find our podcast, and it could be the best blessing that's ever happened to them thanks to you. Thanks for plugging in, and we'll see you back for next week's episode.